people being comfortable with being challenged, that's something, it feels like a continuum. Initially, there's a defense of, wait, hold on a second, you're challenging me. I'm defensive about this. That will happen for a short period of time until they realize like, hey, something good came out of that. And then all of a sudden I'm more open to it. So it's like this bump that we see in our coaching engagements. If we can push really hard up front, get them out of their comfort zone quickly, doing something impactful, they start to be more open to that and almost craving it. This is a problem, right?
Welcome to the Flywheel Effect, the podcast where ambition meets expertise in the world of luxury home services. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a small business owner, or a forward-thinking professional, this is your platform for growth, profit, and prosperity. Each episode, we dive deep into how to leverage data for smarter business decisions and share insights that help you transition from technician to visionary. Let's jump in.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Flywheel Effect. I'm your host, Brent Sonnek-Schmelz, along with my co-host, Matt Bernath. Matt, how's it going today?
Hey, man, doing amazing. Looking forward to watching my oldest daughter compete in her first triathlon this weekend. It's going to be an early morning, 6 a.m. on Sunday. She's done some duathlons before, running and biking, but this time she's actually going to do the swim, which is the part that she's most anxious about.
That's exciting. How, is it an ocean swim?
No, this is in a freshwater lake in San Dimas.
Has she done some open water swimming before, or just been training in a pool?
She's done a little bit of open water swimming, but she doesn't love swimming. And it's one of those things, unless you know what you're doing in practice, it can be really tough. She's pushing through all of that. It is her least favorite part of triathlon, but super proud of her for trying it. She's in her senior year, just joined the triathlon team and trying to keep herself active.
There's a triathlon team at school?
And she's a great runner and a good cyclist. I think she can make up for some of that time.
What's the distance?
This is a small one. I think it's a 300-meter swim, a 5K, and maybe 20 miles on the bike.
In terms of triathlon, swimming is by far my favorite. I'm an open water ocean swimmer where every summer I try to do at least 2 or 3 ocean mile races. I mean, I'm middle of the pack kind of speed, but I enjoy the swim out in the ocean.
It is something else. Like, her and I were in the ocean not long ago. She's, oh, Dad, practice with me. And I'm like, okay, I'll practice swimming with you. I'm not a great swimmer. I timed myself. I'm like, how long can I go? I literally went 1 minute until I was out of breath. 1 minute. And I'm a pretty healthy guy. I exercise every day. 1 minute. So clearly there's a lot for me to learn about the skill of swimming. But yeah, it was wild.
I have a bunch of friends. I'm all water, like swimming, surfing, sailing, rowing, fishing, whatever. It seems like every best friend I've ever had has been a terrible swimmer. I try to get them out into the ocean. I'm out there bobbing around, look like a seal in the ocean, and they just seize up and stress. I think the stress of being in the water causes their heart to race, their breathing. Last summer, I actually saved one of my friends. We were on a boat tour out in Long Island Sound. The guy anchored a couple hundred yards offshore in the sound towards the beach and say, hey guys, go swim to the beach. It's a nice place. So I jump off. I'm with one of my other friends who's not a good swimmer, who's decided he's going to wear a life vest. And the other friend, there were like 4 of us, one of them started swimming off on his own. And he ended up swimming into the wind in a direction that didn't make sense. And he wore himself out in 5 minutes. And I heard him, he screamed, just screaming, Brent, Brent. So I look up, see him over there, and sprint over and pull him in. My lifeguard instincts kicked in. We made it in no problem, but he was freaking out.
Wow. That's wild, man.
Yeah.
Is that your first life-saving story in the water?
No.
Or your only?
No, I was a lifeguard in college on the beach in New Jersey. There didn't have a ton of saves, but one I remember was in New Jersey, it's shallow and then a trough and then a sandbar. You can see people walking on the sandbar out, 50, 100 yards. So people think, oh, I'll just go out there. It's shallow. But there's this 8 to 10 foot trough that gets deep. People who aren't strong swimmers try to get to the sandbar and they fail. So if there's a strong current, they get stuck and panic. So that's what this happened. This woman had a boogie board. She didn't know what she was doing, but she fell off the boogie board in the trough and couldn't go in or out on her own and just started screaming. So I just had to run out and dragged her back in. It was all of 20 seconds, but you get completely jazzed up when that occurs. So.
That's great.
So
There's
yeah,
probably a lot of lifeguards that don't have any stories to save. So it's nice that you had a chance to save one person.
there's the no story, and then some of them have the bad stories.
Lots of bee stings, and I don't know if you guys have stingrays out there, but here on the West Coast, lots of stingray action for the lifeguards.
We do have stingrays, and actually now we have sharks that are a lot more prevalent. And what we have also is bluefish and forage fish, and so there would be feeding frenzies with bait fish. And then the bluefish, they'll be about 2-3 feet long, so they're not huge, but they have really sharp teeth. If you get stuck in the bait fish, you could easily lose a chunk out of your leg or a toe.
Oof.
They do have ocean mammals. So see the dolphins come in, it's lifeguard, you see them from a distance, and you scoot out on your paddleboard. And one day I was out there within the pod of dolphins, and a juvenile or baby dolphin, which is maybe 3 or 4 feet long, jumped over the nose of my board. That was kind of cool. I was lifeguarding, and a humpback whale breached, came straight up out of the water and smacked down, make a huge splash about 100 yards off my beach.
Wow.
And that was awesome. So
Love that. Very cool. Great stories, man.
So
how
there-
are you
there you
doing
go.
today?
I'm doing great. Just busy as always, which is a good thing. Ready to give my wife a break for a few hours tomorrow morning, let her sleep in. I'm going to take the kids out to breakfast, which they
Nice.
enjoy. We get Mickey Mouse waffles at the diner, and then just keep on chugging.
Love it.
So cool. All right. Well, for today, now that we've spent significant time talking swimming, definitely want to hear how your daughter does triathlon. Congratulations on that. Let's talk about what's next. And this applies to your daughter too, because I'm sure this is something you're doing. Coaching and mentoring. When you talk about you, Matt, and you talk about Vital, coaching is core to who you are, right? Like you have a goal of touching 1 million people by the end of next year,
Impacting over 1 million people by the end of 2025.
which is, and the way that you're doing through coaching, personal development, and mentoring. Dive in. Like when I say those words, coaching and mentoring, why are they so important to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think for me, what's important is I personally have had some mentors throughout my life who have brought out the best in me. Those folks have inspired me to help others to see blind spots. When I recognize that there's so much potential in every human that's untapped, a lot of that potential is inside of the blind spots, the things we don't know. I recognize how important it is to help each other find those blind spots, but to also push the comfort zone, because all the growth happens outside of our comfort zones. Some of these things are very cliche, which as you listen to them and unpack it, you recognize that's exactly what happens in professional college or high school sports. I'll use my daughter as an example. She was a cheerleader for the last 8 years. She's going into her senior year in high school. Her junior year cheerleading was terrible. They had changed the coaches and went from being CIF winners the year before to not a great team. She said, it's time to do something else. Pretty much every cheerleader quit the team. A couple of them decided to join cross country and triathlon. So she said, why not? I can do this. I've run before. But she definitely at the time was not a runner, cyclist, and certainly not a swimmer. She decided to try it out, staying busy and being with friends. Through great coaching on her cross country team, she became a solid runner. In fact, she set a PR for herself in the 5K on one of the hardest courses. She just felt incredible about herself. And that work could have only been done through coaching. Her coach is an incredible runner herself. And my daughter just complains week after week, oh man, she's having us do this and having us do this. But the growth she's experienced over the last 2 months is massive because she's forcing herself. The coach pushes her out of her comfort zone. The most visible examples of successful coaching can be seen in sports. Also, visible examples of unsuccessful coaching can be seen in sports. You have coaches that move from team to team with tons of success, and coaches that move from team to team and eventually go away because they just can't find success.
I think understanding that, taking it from the frame of sports, which people can comprehend, right? People understand it in the context of team sports primarily, like basketball coach on the sidelines, football coach on the sidelines. What they don't necessarily see is that every single professional golfer also has a coach. You don't see them on match day. Understanding what that coach does behind the scenes during practice and motivation on how to improve on the margins is not visible. I think that's what's missed the most. Coaching is not about the game. Coaching is about the preparation for the game. The game is secondary when it comes to proper coaching, right? And the reason I bring that up is when you think about business coaching, it's not about game day. It's about how you get ready to accomplish the tasks that you need to when you're dealing with them as they come at you at work, right? That's what you do every day.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a great point. You bring up two good points there. Not only does every professional golfer, tennis player, individual sport have a coach, they have multiple. They have a swing coach, a putting coach, a sports psychology coach, a kinesiology coach, a coach who helps them in the gym. Same thing in high school sports. Look at a successful high school football team. There's a line of coaches on the sidelines. That's point number one. What we like to share is it's who you become in the process. In the process of taking your business to the next level, your leadership in the next level, whatever it is that you want to accomplish, it's not so much about the goal, it's who you become on the way to that goal. People rarely regress. As you improve your leadership skill, for example, which many business owners need to do for their business to grow, they need to grow themselves, they don't go backwards. Once you unlock that level, you keep going. It's like Super Mario Brothers, right? You never decide to go back a level. I have the perspective of being a coach, but I also am personally being coached by at least two people at any given time. Right now, I have two different coaches who I get to become through the experience of unlocking new levels in my business or unlocking new levels of personal growth. That's part of the excitement for me. Sure, we get to accomplish things, hit numeric goals, hit financial goals, but we get to become something amazing in that process.
So you are a coach who helps other business owners level up and become better editions of themselves as far as financially, leadership, accountability. Yet you have a coach too, right? And today you have two. As someone looking to have you as my coach, should I be skeptical or excited that you feel that you need help?
That's a great question. I think there's levels in my experience, and every single person, nobody has reached the top level, right? Even you look at Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, these guys have to surround themselves with other experts in their field. They can't do it all. And so I believe that there's different levels. I am getting coached and moving forward and reaching my potential so that I can show up better for others that I'm coaching. It's sort of different chapters in the book.
Why did you pick the two coaches that you're working with today?
Great question. I actually am working through two significant growth areas in my life. One is storytelling, and the other is executive presence and charisma. Those are really important to me right now in my next level in the company that we're growing here at Vital. The coaches I chose are experts in those fields. They've grown huge businesses successfully, not just in the coaching world, but in different verticals. My experience is that when you are talking to somebody who's not only been there, but also knows how to ask questions to unlock your blind spots, that is a very valuable coaching relationship.
Are these one-on-one coaching or are they group? I'd like to get into this of how it differs in the different types of value in each.
So the programs that I'm in right now are group coaching where we have a one-on-one component available. The two coaches that I work with, Dan Martell is one of them. I'm in his group coaching platform and I have the option of doing one-to-ones with him. Also, Alex and Layla Hermosi, I'm going to do a group coaching piece that has one-on-one time with them. I follow those two very prominent coaches in the business world, and the group coaching piece I get a ton out of not just listening to what's taught, but also picking up the answers to the Q&A sessions in those group formats. In fact, I get a lot out of that, listening to what other business owners ask, because they're struggling with some of the same stuff that I am.
Yeah, I think the group's really interesting, but I do involve myself in peer groups, both large format, 20 plus, or smaller format, 6 to 10. They're very different value. The part about the 6 to 10 group is, especially if it's repetitive and protected, meaning people keep confidentiality, it gives you an ability to be vulnerable and accessible in a way that gets you great feedback and good response because they probably have the same experiences. It allows you to use your own experience to help others in the same way. It's very powerful to dive into those group relationships, especially when you have a good moderator leading the group.
I agree with that. And I think a peer group is a third piece to the coaching, right? You talked about one-on-one, and I think peer group is a completely separate third piece. And here's why. The facilitator of the peer group doesn't need to be an expert in any of the topics. They just need to be a great facilitator. Maybe it helps if they're an expert, but sometimes if they become the sage on stage, which doesn't always benefit the group. I think the power of the peer group is having a great facilitator, and that each person bringing their own experience and their own perspectives, right? Because we all have different brains that are processing what we see and hear. So yeah, I think the peer group is actually a third piece of coaching. We're getting peer coaching versus coaching from an expert coach. The peer group in our industry, we just started a few months ago. I was out of a peer group for about 2.5 years, but I'm back. So being a member of that peer group is great. We actually have a rotating facilitation, which is awesome. Yeah, I think to add to your points about the peer group, there's a ton of value in everybody having different perspectives and almost even different businesses, right? Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of value in that as well.
Peer groups can go in two ways, right? Either everybody is in a different business, so there's no worry about competition, which I'm in now. Or there's the other kind, like we have facilitated at Vital, which is people in the same industry, but ideally not in competitive geographies, which allows the same openness, but a depth, especially around metrics, that can be unlocking for business owners.
What do you feel like you value most of your peer groups?
So the one I'm in now has 6 people, and everybody's a completely different industry, all acquisition minded, right? Like pure entrepreneurs. I find the experience of learning from them very valuable as getting insights. I also find the network grows as far as having a different thought process. But honestly, the thing I enjoy the most is the conversations. At the end of the meetings, if it's a good group, and I had this in a couple other ones that I've done, I'm like jazzed up for next 24 hours. I talked, I engaged, people had comments to me, and I come out of it with a different mindset as far as my effectiveness and how I'm going to operate. And it winds down over the next month, and I get jazzed up again. I think it's just me and my personality more than anything else. But without question, I end up in a better business place having those monthly conversations.
What are the characteristics of a solid peer group culture? What are the characteristics of the individual members that you see being the most successful? When you look at a peer group that's really healthy, what's the culture of the group, and what are the individuals bringing to that group that would be healthy?
You know, and I'm thinking about this in a couple different ways. One also having been a facilitator for some groups.
We'll get to that.
By far, in a group environment, the number one thing that matters is trust. I don't think anything matters more, because you need to be open with others and accept that they are being open with you in a way that is non-threatening. That trust leads to vulnerability. Vulnerability leads to improvement, and improvement leads to outcome. That progression from trust to outcome can only occur if you start with trust, is the most powerful part about group and coaching. Generally, it's the same progression. But in a group, it's very dynamic along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a very important balance between members and how vocal they are, and respecting that some people are softer spoken than others, so that the people that are most vocal can't dominate. They have to be respectful, and this is where a facilitator comes in, engaging the softer people, but also in a way that provides very pointed feedback that can border on criticism, but because of the trust, it is constructive and for the purpose of making you better.
So those are the group dynamics, right?
Yep.
And then we'll come back and talk about the individual dynamics. Yep. You brought up trust as being the foundation. Once you have the trust, then you can have vulnerability, and then you can have accountability. It's interesting because one of the classics out there is Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. And you brought up trust being the foundation of one of these peer groups, and that's the foundation of what Patrick says is a foundation of a highly functioning team, which is, in my experience, 100% accurate. When you have that trust in your peer group environment, this is one of those examples of what a leader gets to become through the process of coaching or being part of these groups, you get to see what healthy trust looks like in a group environment. And you can take that back to your team and say, do we have that or do we not? The way Lencioni builds his pyramid, the first dysfunction is absence of trust. So that's the foundation. When you have an absence of trust, you have a fear of conflict. When you create trust, you create a space where you can have conflict that everybody recognizes comes from a positive place. I think that's true in the peer group setting. When you have trust in the peer group setting, you can have this conflict, which you really enjoy. One of the things that is energizing for you when you go to these peer groups. Meaningful. So now that you've got a foundation trust that creates a space where you can have positive conflict, that positive conflict creates commitment. Commitment is the next piece in the 5 dysfunctions of a team. When you lack commitment on a team, it's hard for anybody to feel accountable to the results. When you're free to have positive conflict, that conflict can generate some meaningful end result. And in a peer group setting, that usually is one of the members of the peer group recognizing they need to do something different in their business. They need to make a change, an improvement in their business. Committing to it in that setting is only possible because you have a space for trust and conflict. Next month, when you meet as a peer group, you can sit down and say, hey, Brent, you told us you were going to fire your CFO. Yeah. How'd that go? And you're like, oh, I didn't do it. Because there's this trust and space for positive conflict, your group can go, let's talk about that and hold you accountable to the result. What I love about this 5 dysfunctions of a team piece is it's true for the peer group. It's true for all the teams we lead every day in our businesses.
It's actually true for one-on-one coaching relationships too. You have to have that trust. The best ones are the ones that lean into that positive conflict to help get you better. It's how you get stronger.
Absolutely.
I think that's good. All right, that's awesome. We do have a little teaser coming up, but let's keep going with this coaching. I do meet a lot of business people. Keep going.
Before we move forward, the one piece on the peer group that we still need to circle up on is, what do you think of the personal traits that the individuals bring to a healthy peer group?
I like diversity of thought. I think you have to have people who have different opinions, or else it just ends up being circular. Right? So you want to have differentiation. I also feel that you can't be caustic. People can burn a peer group to the ground. And that's where a facilitator has to be willing to either calm someone down or launch them. Mm-hmm. I think those are probably the 2 most important, on top of the willingness to be vulnerable, which is just table stakes when it comes to this kind of stuff. We know plenty of groups that all they do is tell each other how great they are and think, oh yeah, this is awesome. We have this great group where we talk, but you're not really talking. You're just bragging. So what changed after you left the group? Nothing.
I love the diversity piece because I've been in peer groups for about 2.5 years. Initially, members don't like the diversity. Mm-hmm. There's this natural human tendency to want to hang out with people that confirm your beliefs, right? Yeah, you're right, Brent. We want to be told we're right all the time. And of course, there's no growth in that. Initially, when somebody joins a peer group, they're like, I don't feel like these guys are really the same as me. And it's like, okay, let's talk about that. Do you want just a bunch of the same? And how much growth that's going to happen there? What I've experienced is over a period of months and sometimes some difficult conversations, people recognize this diversity is really powerful, even if we're in the same industry, which is, in Vital's case, we're all in the same industry. I think what you're talking about lends itself to some of these other peer groups where there's different industries, but we have a ton of diversity even inside of our peer groups that are in the same industry.
Geographic, perspective, size, all of that, what types of projects, it all leads to a ton of value. People not appreciating the diversity is one of the primary reasons a few people who, another peer group that's diverse industries don't join it. Is because they think, oh, what are they going to teach me? They don't know anything about my industry. Mm-hmm. I hear that all the time. And I'm like, that is so close-minded and short-sighted. You don't think that other people's perspective can help you grow. It's a big limiting factor for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah. You know what one of my favorite things is that comes out of that, Brent, is when someone joins a group like that, the first growth piece they get is the ability to simplify the explanation of what they do.
Yeah.
Because when you join a peer group like that, you're forced over and over again to explain what custom integration is. You got to do that over and over again because there's people joining and coming and going from the group. Some of these groups are big. But that's one of those examples of it's not just what you get out of these coaching experiences, it's who you get to become. You get to become this person who can simplify the explanation, not just of your business, but that rolls into everything else you're doing in the company. It's pretty interesting.
It's really interesting. I didn't think of it, but it's 100% true. Learning how to describe yourself to others who don't know who you are is very powerful. Everybody says on your elevator pitch, but no one really does.
Yeah. This year, I started asking a new opening question in my presentations. The question I now ask, and just for everybody who's listening, I present a couple times a month to luxury home service providers throughout the country at all these different events. I'm usually sitting in front of a fairly large crowd, and I like to get them talking and interacting. So I open up with the question of explain what your business does to a 5-year-old. And I give them a couple of minutes to think about that. And Brent, it is a stumper. It is a real stumper for these folks. We're so stuck in the minutia and weeds of our business, myself included. Sometimes we don't think about simplifying the description of what we do.
Oh, that's great. That's an awesome opener. People, I'm sure they get, oh my God, it's impossible. Look on their face. Circling back around to coaching. One-on-one or group, but let's even talk about one-on-one. And let me differentiate here. There's coaching and there's mentoring. Coaching is someone who's probably a professional in some capacity or a volunteer coach where they have a method or a process of helping somebody. A mentor, by definition, not a professional coach who has some dedication to helping others at a different stage in their career or development become better.
What pops up in my head when I think of the difference between a coach and a mentor, a coach helps people see things for themselves. Like I feel like our job as coaches is not to say, hey, this is what you should do, or coach's job isn't necessarily to give advice. It's to help people unpack things they already know or see blind spots. Mentors are a little bit more of a follow me, meaning, hey, I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm a little more advice, a little more demonstration, a little more show and tell. That's how I see a mentor different from a coach.
Interesting. And I don't necessarily make that distinction. A basketball coach or golf coach is definitely telling someone how to shoot or how to swing a club to unlock potential. A mentor is, and I think this is a key for mentors, a good mentor is doing it for themselves as much as for their mentee. There's personal satisfaction in how they take someone under their wing and guide them to the next point in their career. To your point, there is a little more follow me and copy and do it is, a little more kind of parent-child relationship than a coach, which can be a little more peer-based. I like where you're going. I didn't really think about it that way. My framework, I'm trying to gauge how they overlap. It just got me thinking. You can tell I'm thinking out loud. My brain is just on its own. As always happens with me. Regardless, it's interesting frames. Where I was taking this is like with a mentor, I don't know who gets more out of the relationship if they're good, the mentor or the mentee. I don't necessarily think of it the same way as a coach.
I'm certainly not trying to defend my position here. It sounds like you're opening up to this. My vision of the difference between a coach and a mentor is oftentimes a coach, especially if you look at professional sports, is actually not a better player and probably never was than the players he or she is coaching, right? You look at Tiger Woods' golf coach, he is not better than Tiger Woods. They are not playing rounds of golf where Tiger is losing to his coach. You don't see the basketball coach on the sidelines taking off his tie and saying, let me just show you how to shoot this free throw. That's where I see the piece of a coach being different. Yeah. A mentor I see as being somebody like, for example, let's imagine I just joined the Lakers. I'm a young guy, college basketball star, but I don't know what it's like to be in the pros. Pair me up with one of my peers to teach me how to be a pro, right? Because the coach isn't going to do that. The coach isn't going to be the guy saying, this is how you act as a professional ball player. They're going to pair him with a peer. And I think if we use the golf analogy, there's probably a lot of those scenarios in college sports where you have a senior mentoring the freshman, filling in the gaps where that coach is not able to. So that's where my head was at.
I like that a lot. Coaches they can be, but they don't have to be better than their students. I think that's great. Mentors, level of success at the task. I think that's an important distinction.
It changed a belief for me. A coach has to have been there. There's different values. This was the case for me early on. I need to choose coaches who have been there before. I personally experienced being coached by somebody who had never run a business like mine, and that was successful. My first coaching engagement was to help a traffic control company larger than any business I'd ever run, and in an industry I had zero experience with. I was hired to coach the CEO, and it was incredibly successful. In 15 months, we completely turned the company around. We were able to sell it to a public company. We 7x profit on this thing, and we sold, and the owner got to retire. All those experiences as a coach were brand new to me. But I was able to help them unpack some of their blind spots, see some of the things they'd never seen before, ask a lot of questions that had never been asked before, in part because I'd never been in that industry or worked for that type of company.
Yeah, coaching is about process. And everybody can use help with process. You figured out the process and how to guide that company to a better place. Perfect. I had this little anecdote. The stories pop in my head from my life that are somehow related. And this one is sort of related. You talk about senior in college dealing with a freshman. My dad was being recruited to play football. He was visiting college. He was going to visit Yale. And he was staying with a senior. And the senior was known as the guy that helps high school seniors get shown New Haven. And so he took him under his wing and spent a weekend with him. And he was showing him around and everything. My dad had a great time. They went out to a party once, and my dad met a girl at that party. He knew because he was staying where this guy's room was in the dorm or college, as they called him at Yale. He took the girl back and locked him out of his room for the night. Luckily, this guy was a good mentor type and didn't have any negative attributes. The funny part is the only reason I found this out is on a business call that's completely unrelated. I met that guy, and he told me when he graduated from Yale what year, and I knew it was 4 years after my father. They were both on the football team, and I asked him, "Did you know my dad?" And he says, "I think that name rings a bell." Then I asked my dad about him, and my dad told me that story. It cracked me up. Anyway, that's a college senior mentorship story. So last bit on this before we hit into another topic. I think mentors, though when they're good, can get even more out of the relationship than a mentee. Do you agree? Or do you have a different perspective?
I agree. I think the same could be said for coaches. But in both cases, there's situations the mentor and the coach have never seen before. If they're a good coach or mentor, they're able to move to curiosity to try and understand that, and everybody learns from that situation, right? I also think that there's a satisfaction piece, which I think what you're mentioning, and helping others. And I think certainly my experience of coaching, that's been the case, and it feels like mentors would be the same.
I'm saying it's more than satisfaction. This gets back to something we've spoken about a bunch, is the value in teaching, right? Mm-hmm. If you're mentoring, you're also engaging with someone who hopefully has questions. That guidance can even open up your own blind spots, such that you get better at your job because someone is there watching.
They're asking questions that we like to say that they're coming from a first day mentality, right? It's when you've been doing your job for 20 years, you bring somebody in for their first day, they're like, "Why is this orange extension cord over here?" And you're like, "Oh, that's always been there." Well, why doesn't somebody do something about it? Moving an electrical outlet, right? I love that.
Yeah. What this gets down to is we've outlined 3 different ways you can have some sort of coaching. One-on-one, the most expensive, arguably the most effective. You can have group where it's one-to-many, or you can have peer group where it's communal within a relatively small group interacting with a facilitator. The 4th piece is mentorship, where you're helping others. I think all of these are severely underutilized by entrepreneurs and business people. Too many people feel they got it and they don't need the help, don't have time for the help, or to help somebody else. And I've heard that over and over. And I think there's a question people have to ask: why do I have that attitude?
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it comes down to the feeling that our education system teaches us about what it feels like to not have the right answer. you're an educator, so I'm sure you have feedback on that. Throughout our younger years, we're taught that not having the right answer is bad, that it hardwires our brain into thinking if there's something wrong with us. Asking for help becomes something we have to learn in adulthood, because I don't think it comes naturally in childhood. If we don't end up learning how to ask for help, we just don't ask for help. So that's my perspective. Could be way wrong, but that's my view.
No, I think that's part of it. I think there's another part where people, it's not that they are afraid to say they don't know. It's that they are unwilling to admit that somebody might know a better way. It's a stubbornness. They don't have time for somebody else.
Right.
Without the realization of that. I think one other piece, a lot of people have had really bad experiences with coaching and mentorship. There's a lot of garbage out there that's pitched as life-changing. Knowing how to parse that before you spend time or money is actually a pretty difficult skill.
People being comfortable with being challenged, that's something, it feels like a continuum. Initially, there's a defense of, wait, hold on a second, you're challenging me. I'm defensive about this. That will happen for a short period of time until they realize, like, hey, something good came out of that. And then all of a sudden, I'm more open to it. So it's like this bump that we see in our coaching engagements. If we can push really hard up front, get them out of their comfort zone quickly, doing something impactful, they start to be more open to that and almost craving it. This is a problem, right? I think if somebody was to ask me advice on how to judge a coach, I think it's two things. Number one, if the coach is giving a lot of advice, that would be something to be a little weary of. At some point, that coach is going to run out of advice. You're going to hopefully grow your business beyond the point of where that coach has ever been, and it's time to go to a new coach. Or you might be presented with a situation that coach has never seen before, and they might BS you, and you won't be able to tell the difference. Is that coach pushing you outside your comfort zone? If not, then chances are there's not a lot of growth happening in your world.
I think it's really important because I think trying to make this a good takeaway. We both agree that coaching is really important for most business people. We also know that a lot of people have had a bad experience with it in the past, which makes them leery to invest any more time or money. If they can have a process, man, this might be an interesting white paper, Matt, or social post. What is the process for vetting a coach such that you can have a greater level of confidence that you will derive value from the experience? I think people would find that incredibly useful.
Absolutely.
So, I'm just going to put that on your to-do list.
My short to-do list.
Oh, man.
I think what would also be interesting, as many bad coaches as bad coaching clients, some of the bad experiences people have had with coaching probably weren't the coach, but the mindset of the coaching client. Right. There's probably a white paper to be written about determine if your coach is worth what you're paying them. There's another white paper that says before you invest in a coach, get your mind, because this is probably what's going to happen. If you get a good coach, this is where you're going to need to be to make that investment worthwhile.
And not to add to this, but then there's another group that had failure because it was just a poor fit between coach and client. Right?
Some people need a softer touch, others not so much.
All right, this has been great. Anyone who wants more discussion about coaching, feel free to reach out to either of us. Let's shift this over to some future content that we're going to do. Matt, we've discussed this a little bit, but I think we should have a book club over the next year. What do you think? Yeah, I think let's set out a couple of rules. So once a quarter, we're going to pick a book. We're going to alternate. One book, my book, next Matt's book. Over the next 4 quarters, we should pick 2 books each. One book will be published in the last 5 years. The second book needs to have been published before 2000 and still be relevant. A new grade option and a classic. What do you think, Matt? You think you pick 2 books that fit those parameters?
I'm looking forward to it.
I think this will be great. Next episode, Matt and I will pick our 2 books, which I don't think we have picked yet. Matt's going to read the books that I say, and I'm going to read the books that Matt says. Maybe some complaints, but hopefully we all get something great out of it.
And this is a perfect example of being willing to be pushed out of your comfort zone, right? We have a basis of trust. We have a basis of conflict. That may not have been the case if we didn't have that trust foundation. Love that.
Yeah, absolutely. We come from completely different worlds and perspectives. I'm fairly certain that without knowing it, we would not pick the same books, nor would we probably pick the same genres of books. Obviously, this is all going to be business lesson related somehow, but there's a lot of room in that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll be fun. I will say, though, for the listeners, because of the way we alternate, these episodes, it may not necessarily be the next one, but within the next few
That's true.
episodes, you will hear. So look out for it, subscribe, and we'll have some fun with this one.
Yeah, that'll be great. Any last thoughts on coaching or mentorship, Matt?
No, this was awesome, man. I'll always enjoy our discussions. Thank you for always asking great questions. It's fantastic.
For me and Matt, for the host, Brent Sonnek-Schmelz and Matt Bernath, this has been the Flywheel Effect. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please like it, subscribe, and share it with someone who you think would find value in it. Until next time, we're the Flywheel Effect. So long, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to the Flywheel Effect. Our journey through the intricate world of luxury home services continues to be fueled by your passion for excellence and innovation. If you found value in our conversations today, don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. More insights and resources. Visit us online at growwithvital.com. Until next time.